I don't think I will ever go on an antidepressant ever again. And that is a very strong statement to make because one does not know what the future holds. Hey friends, I'm AmandaMuse, and today I'm going to be talking to you, well, it's like an added video to my mental health journey. I've been off antidepressants now for a year, and I've done some check-ins since I have come off of the medication, and I thought I would kind of just do an updated one because I get a lot of comments on the videos in that series pretty regularly, like if not daily, and I just think it's worthy of conversation, and there's some little things I want to add to those videos. Game plan for the videos, I'm going to share a little bit about my journey, my experience thus far, where I'm at now, and then I've added in some questions from you guys that I got on Instagram. Feel free to follow me at AmandaMuse on Instagram if you want to kind of see the day-to-day life that's going on there. We have great conversations. I'm going to link a playlist in the eye, maybe even below, but most likely just click the eye, and I will share with you like my mental health journey. So just to sum it up, because those videos already exist, I went on antidepressants in 2021 after much consideration, after therapy, after exercise. Keep in mind, 2021 was like right smack in the middle of the pandemic. I have a lot of stuff that was like leading up to this. You know, we had job loss in my family. There was a lot of stress and pressure on me as the sole income provider, and it was just a lot. Like I think that goes without saying, you know what I mean? So there's that. It resulted in my body experiencing a lot of burnout, and I was having extreme panic. So panic attacks at night that would last hours. I was hardly sleeping. So it had this huge ripple effect on my life. And I realized that all of the things I had in place, like the therapy, the physical fitness, the socializing, like none of it was working anymore. And I needed I needed help. I needed a little intervention. And so with the help of my doctor, I went on a 10 milligram dose of escitalopram, and it worked for a long time until it stopped working. And I decided to wean after about 11 months or so on the antidepressant. And the reasons for weaning, again, there's like a whole video about this, but I started to numb out. I started to put on a lot of weight. My libido disappeared. I was just operating like no high highs, no low lows. It wasn't like a varied day, hence the numb feeling. It was just very boop, boop, you know, where most people are like experiencing these nice big up and downs, you know, cry, you laugh, you have just like, I just wasn't having all those big feelings. And it was a little concerning to me. And my doctor had said, you know, go on the antidepressants and then let's revisit in a year's time. And so I had made an appointment with her, and we just talked about a weaning schedule, and I went per the schedule, and it was hard as fuck. I can't even sugarcoat that for you. Coming off of antidepressants was a time. Literally, those brain zaps, if you've experienced them, you know what I'm talking about. And I say this in the weaning video, like the feeling, it's almost like ripping off a scab, and you have this open wound, and you know it's just about healed. It just needs a little bit of air. Maybe you're not like wild like me and rip off scabs as kids. I still do that. I have a cut on my leg. I just realized I ripped off the scab today. Anyway, but like it's nearly healed, but it's still pretty tender. You know, that's what it felt like. And so it was like, every time I had like a first time experience, I was like, oh, ow, ah. Like it was a lot. It was a lot. And I understand the hesitation for wanting to come off antidepressants, because that initial experience with the brain zaps and then leading into anxiety again, because like, let's be honest, you go on antidepressants for a reason, you know? In my case, it was anxiety and panic. And so, you know, going into those first experiences that I knew that could lead to panic, which oddly enough was like social situations, even with people that I love and I feel comfortable with, it was such an outpouring of energy on my part that I would come home and I was so depleted. But what's nice is that over time, my energy started to come back. Once I started having some of those firsts where it was like, oh, I can survive a lunch date, and then I didn't have a panic attack that night, I was like, what? Like, talk about incredible. I think what's important to recognize is like, you're still going to be in those situations that potentially cause you stress. But the hope is that you can implement some tools that'll prevent you from like tipping into the full-blown anxiety attack or the panic attack. And so to this day, like I still have moments where I'm like, oh no, I feel it coming on. Like I feel this tightness in my chest. Like I can't catch my breath. And I have some tools now that I put into place to help me through through those moments. You know, based on some of the comments that I receive on those videos regularly, it's a variation of two very similar themes. One, that weaning is brutal. And I think the majority of people that come off of an antidepressant, it's a really hard experience for various reasons. From the physical reaction, like the brain zaps and just the overall like, oh my God, this feels terrible, to the panic and the anxiety that can come from doubting your ability to handle yourself in stressful situations. Maybe that's just me, but that is the truth of it. It's like, can I do life without this pill that has helped me do life, right? 1 year later from the weaning, am I where I thought I would be? Short answer is no. I thought I would be in a different place, and I'm gonna get to that. But it's just taken a lot longer than I thought to recalibrate after this experience. Does panic and anxiety still happen for me? Yes. In fact, kind of frequently sometimes, going through a little bit of a rough patch in my personal life, just some stuff going on, mostly just trying to recover from the pandemic and the damage and devastation it caused on my little family. And so life will throw you curveballs. I can handle it, but I still have feelings of anxiety that come up. That said, though, I feel like my body has recovered enough that I can handle these moments. Like when I look back on the last few years, I think a big, message that comes to me is that my body was in burnout. Like, is it your adrenal system? It was just like, I was completely dysregulated and I could not regulate myself on my own. It's like all my nerves were frazzled. I was just too anxious and I couldn't regulate myself. I just kept dipping too low and couldn't find my way back to like a regulated place. And that's when I realized that the medication was almost like a reset. Like it brought me back to a place where I stopped having so much panic and anxiety. My body had a chance to rest. And then I got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm not like feeling anything anymore, and now I need to try to do life again. It's like my body just needed a little break and my mind needed a little break. And so the medication did what it was supposed to do. I think something that's interesting, and I don't know if I've said this publicly, but for my personal situation, I don't think I will ever go on an antidepressant ever again. And that is a very strong statement to make because one does not know what the future holds. I definitely will hold space for myself if I ever need to do that again and really give it some consideration. But I think the experience of weaning and finding my way back to myself has been so much harder than I could have ever imagined. It has a little dark undertones, honestly. But it's worth knowing and it's worth sharing that it can take a lot longer in your healing journey than you might plan for. And maybe that's just something to consider. Should I ever need to go on something like this again, I need to know that it could be like a year until I'm starting to actually feel better. Before I get into all of that, I think the first thing is like mental health check-in up here. I'm actually doing really good. I feel really good. I feel really stable. I feel I have lovely emotions up and down, and I find joy in my day, and I'm able to experience, sad moments and like just normal feelings. So I feel really good. I feel really grounded. I'm doing a lot of things for myself in self-care that help me get to that place. So like socializing, movement, time outside, sunshine on my face, like all the good things. I'm eating well and taking care of myself. So that's really good. And communicating, because that's another piece of it, right? When we're having big emotions and we're experiencing things, it's so important to share with people who love you. So that's really going well. The panic and anxiety, yeah, it still happens. Like I'm still human. I have things. I have stuff that was, perhaps coping mechanisms from before antidepressants that I still have in place now. I feel like I can manage things though. Like stuff doesn't blow me over anymore. I'm very strong and sturdy, and I have tools now. So a couple things I do when I experience that panic and those heavy, hard emotions, I kind of do like a bit of a check, like, what's going on? Am I tired? Am I overstimulated? What can I do for myself? So some things that I do, if it's like I actually feel myself tipping into a panic attack, which typically happens later at night if I'm really tired, I put cold water on my chest and on the back of my neck, and that really helps. I notice that I just don't do well with alcohol. Like, I can have one drink and then I'm good. If I start tipping into 2, my God, 3, it's almost a guaranteed panic attack later in the night. So I don't mess with it. We're not gonna do that dance. You know what I mean? So it's not that great for you anyway. So it's not something I'm totally sad to see go. I just drink in moderation, which is like 1 drink. I'm a cheap date. So if I feel that panic, cold water, cold water, cold water on my face, and it's like it shocks my body out of that feeling. It works. I focus on my breathing. I do some box breathing. I try to remove myself from the stressful situation. If it's something like a person causing me stress, then I really realize, ooh, some boundaries maybe are being overstepped here. Let's refocus on these boundaries and put these boundaries back in place. And so I do this regularly, which has been very helpful, and it works. I also focus on sleep. I love ASMR for relaxation and a meditation. Walking with my dogs is a movement meditation for me, and it really helps me. Like, I talk all the time on my Instagram how fitness just shakes all the cobwebs off me. It's like it cracks that little buzz, that little hum that I can get, and it gets rid of it. So that is just something that works for me. It's not gonna work for everybody, but like I'd say most people it does good things for. So that's what I've been doing. My libido is back, we're good. Not much more to say on that. Just I'm happy it's there, because my God, when that starts to disappear, I'm like, I like all of the fun things that come with that intimate side of our lives. And I make it like part of my personality to enjoy it. So when that went out the window, I was like, whoa, what is happening? Like, between food and going outside, I mean, that's like one of my top 3 things to do. You know what I mean? So like, I'm glad it's back. Something that is a little trickier and also just hard to talk about is the weight gain and the weight loss. Tricky topic. It did not shift as quick as I thought it would. And I think there's a couple variables here, because our bodies are all different, and what works for me and doesn't work for me, it's not gonna be the same experience you have. But I will say that, like, I think it's not that an antidepressant makes you gain weight. My understanding is that it makes you a little bit hungry. So you're just eating a little bit more. And so my lifestyle had shifted a bit when I was on the medication. I was eating at different times of day. I was eating more. I was eating a lot of snacks, which is not really what I do. And then I think when you gain weight, it is really hard to lose weight, because your body wants you to maintain the calories that you're eating and where you're at. And like, there's a whole science to weight loss. And my main focus is not weight loss, but I'm talking like 25, 30 pounds heavier than when I started the antidepressants. Now, I should say, for myself, as like a reference point, I was really anxious just before I started the pills, obviously. So my weight started to get really small. And so if you actually go back in time and look at those videos in 2021, I was probably the smallest I'd been since my breastfeeding days. So my body naturally fluctuates, and then add on, like, nearing my 40s, I'm 39 now, our hormones change as women. How we hold on to weight and lose weight is very different. So there's like a lot of variables, right? So I know it's not just the medication. However, the impact has been more significant than I initially realized. And so that's just been really interesting for me to unpack. I just thought the weight would come off quicker, because I thought, okay, I'm off the medication. I'm gonna get my endurance back. I'm gonna feel more motivated to work out, and then it'll just like fall off me. But actually, it took so much longer than I thought for my energy to come back. So if you figure I was off the medications in June, I was working, now let's be honest, I work out very consistently, but I'd say it's only since maybe March. January it started to get better. February was better. March I was like, oh, this is what I love. I'm lifting heavy weights again. And now here I am at the end of May, and I'm back to running on the treadmill and doing really hard workouts, which is something that I really love to do. So for my own benchmark, like I know that where I'm at right now is very similar to where I've been in past, in 2021 and 2020 in terms of my health and fitness. But the weight still hasn't budged. And I know that again, my body has changed and shifted. I've gotten more muscles. Like this, I feel uncomfortable almost talking about it because like, I'm not trying to explain. Like nobody needs to explain why they've gained weight. But I think that it is always top of mind. Like it's a common comment about antidepressants. Like, did you gain weight? Did you gain weight? And then did you lose the weight? And so it's not like it just fell off me. Something to consider, like I got to put the work in. I've got to change my habits and implement more movement. And I can honestly say I feel very good right now. Like my fitness, my desire to move, and my body and the way it's responding is very similar to when I was in my really healthy physical state a few years back. But it took a year to get here, and that is surprising to me. Okay, so without making this video like 45 minutes long, I'm gonna get to some of the questions and comments that you guys left me on Instagram. All right, a couple questions. How did you know you'd be able to take yourself off them and remain at that new level? I didn't know. Honestly, I didn't know, but I felt like where I was at with that super numbed out feeling, I just couldn't be there anymore. And I was a bit concerned about my personal relationships, like my marriage, and also my relationship to myself. I was like, something is off. And I think you just know when something needs to change. And I was ready to take on the challenge. Dean had been hired back in March. He was going back to work in June. I could feel the stress melting away, like the actual stress. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to give this a go. But I didn't know. And my doctor was really lovely. And she was like, if you feel like you need to go back on them, there is no shame and we can do that. So knowing that I had the option to resume medication if I felt like I couldn't handle it was really comforting. But I thought I got to give this a try because what I was feeling and where I was at was no longer working. Are there meds whose side effects don't include possible weight gain, and do they work? I'm sure that there are. I have a good friend who was on a different medication and swears by it. In fact, says that she lost weight on it, but I don't know. Do you know what I mean? She also didn't have anxiety. It was more like a depression thing. So I just think it really depends what medication you're on, what you're experiencing, but there are real side effects that can affect you. How do you know for sure that you need medication? I think it's like I said at the start, it was like all of the things in my toolkit that I used on a regular basis to help regulate me, none of them were working. And what I was experiencing, these almost daily panic attacks, were starting to really affect my life. And I'm like, okay. And that is what my doctor said. She goes, the moment at a point where you feel like your life is being disrupted, then maybe we talk about meds. So it was definitely not my first step. In my previous videos, I talk about I have a complicated relationship to the pharmaceutical industry because of a family member who abuses it. And I just it's very complicated for me. So but I knew that I couldn't make it work. I just could not regulate myself, and I really needed a helping hand. Someone mentioned, just how it's very interesting to talk about antidepressants being like a temporary fix. And actually, I think that conversation maybe needs more focus. I think that perhaps people think that antidepressants are this lifelong journey. It doesn't have to be. In fact, my doctor was like, you do them for a year and then let's revisit in a year's time. And it just so happened that at the 11-month mark, I was like, okay, I'd like to get off of these. And so, yeah, it's really a personal thing. But I think looking at it as a temporary, helpful tool might be really beneficial to people who have that mild anxiety and panic, right? Because I'm not coming from a place of severe mental health issues. This is more like a life moment got really hard and my body was extremely burnt out and I needed a helping hand. So they worked, but they weren't needed forever. A lovely commenter said that they love their antidepressants, that they saved their life. And I really do believe that that can be true for some, you know, that it helps you get to a point where you are feeling normal feelings and you're not experiencing those high highs and low lows. I think it is such a personal journey, right? And there's no shame in needing them. And I agree on that. And I'm so glad that they work for her. There's a thing about including therapy in this topic, and absolutely. So with therapy, what I do is I go to therapy almost like a proactive experience. And of course there's accessibility issues, right? Like I'm really fortunate to have health benefits through Dean. And so I'm able to have a portion of my therapy cost like paid for by the company, which is great. So I go on a monthly basis and I love it. It's just an opportunity for me to share some vulnerable things and work on stuff for myself. And it's just like a real self-care thing for me. It doesn't work for everybody. And I'll say, like, in therapy, I try to really have a focus or like an intent with each conversation, because sometimes you can open some cans of worms that like really don't need to be opened. Perhaps that's a conversation for another day, but there can be like too much focus, if that makes sense. Anyway, we'll move on from that topic, but yes, therapy is incredible, and that is part of my toolkit in terms of managing my mental health. Do you ever wish you were back on them? Absolutely not. Never. No. Like I said, a personal choice, but I will hopefully never require them ever again in my life, and I hope to never ever go back on them. The coming off process was so hard for me. And I can see why people refrain from coming off of them, because that is how hard it is to come off of them. And I just think it's taken me so long to get to where I am. I will say that, like, we go on antidepressants for a reason. And I do acknowledge and I'm beginning to come to terms with the fact that, like, there was a lot of trauma that I experienced in the last few years. And we hold that in our bodies. And it has been a process to release it. And it's a daily journey for me in that sense. I just keep having to put one foot in front of the other. And I know when I get my movement in, my workout for the day, when I go for my walk, when I take time to chill out with my Nintendo Switch, or like whatever it is, make time with friends, like all of this stuff helps me feel fulfilled and really good in my mind. And I just, like I was saying earlier, I just didn't expect it to take me so long to get back to feeling really good. It's really surprising to me. I would love to know if you've been through something similar, perhaps needing to go on meds for a while and coming off of them. Like, did it take you longer than you thought? Did you bounce back quicker? I mean, all of our journeys are so different. We don't know how we're going to respond in these situations. But yeah, like a year, that's like a long time, you know? And lastly, what was the main factor in you deciding to stop them? It's such a hard decision, so many pros and cons. Initially, it was like, I think it's 3 things. It's like the numbness was a big one. Losing my libido was really shocking to me. I was like, absolutely not. Like, I know for some, maybe that's not a big deal, but for me, that is a huge part of my life. Like, I know. And then the weight gain, I was becoming unrecognizable to myself. And I was having such a hard time with it. And this can be complicated because we should love our bodies in the forms that we are. And I think what's important to recognize is, like, I'm very comfortable in my body, in the sense that I have curves and I'm tall and I have cellulite. I have all the stuff. I got C-section scar. Like, there's these things that are part of me. But I also know that my weight fluctuates between certain numbers. And this was where I normally fluctuate. And I was like, over here, what is happening? Like, this is not, what? Like, it was so bizarre to me. And I just didn't feel like myself. And that's really important to me, to feel good in my body. I like to run on the treadmill. I like to lift heavy weights and get a good sweat. And for some reason, I had no endurance, no motivation. I was like, what is going on? So I don't think it's so much the weight, although that was like what tripped me into realizing that, like, oh, something's changing here, and like, what's going on? Because I'm such an active person. And those were like the 3 big things. And I think that each person's going to have their own unique experience. And I'm sure there's going to be some people who are like really annoyed with me for one, mentioning the weight and how much it bothered me, and two, the fact that like I'm so strongly never going to go on an antidepressant again. But I just think it's a cautionary tale. Like, life is heavy at times, and there's going to be blips in the road where we're going to need a little bit more help than other times, and there's no shame in that. And I don't feel any shame for having gone on these pills. I just think I'm very aware now of that journey and how difficult it's been to get to where I am, that I am willing to try everything else before I ever need to do them again. And it is a personal choice. I'm just sharing my truth. And so I hope that lands somewhere nice with you. I am definitely open to conversation. Leave me some comments. Let me know what you're thinking, your thoughts. And everybody's journey is so different. Like, why I needed meds is very different from why someone else does. And yeah, it's a very layered conversation, isn't it? Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for leaving me your questions on Instagram. Let's continue the conversation. Follow me, subscribe, and I'll catch you with a new video next week. All right, bye guys.